credit card companies use points and miles because they want to obfuscate and confuse you. They want you to think that if you're just using miles and points, then those were free. What do you care? It must be a great value. Don't be confused by credit card companies. They want to confuse you. Don't let them. Take the time to do the math. I spent over $1 million on credit cards in just 1 year. Let my experience help you get out of debt and use credit cards to your advantage. Now let's get into this video. So I'm going to show you how to compare credit cards when you first want to determine if you're going to sign up and use that particular card or not. Some give you, in terms of rewards, miles, points, and cash. Why do they do that? Why do they differ? They do it on purpose because they want to confuse you. They want you to look at it and say, oh, look, I can get 10 points if I sign up for this card. Oh, but that one will give me 100 points. Hold on, that one will give me 10,000 points. No, wait, that one will give me 100,000 points. And that might be how some people are deciding whether or not to sign up for a card, but they have no idea what 1,000 points will get them on that card, or 10,000, or 100,000. So if you're getting miles, or you're getting points, or you're getting cash, how do you know which of those cards you should choose? Well, somehow we have to be able to equate them all on a level playing field. I do it myself. This is what I do. I call it the 1% or the 1 cent hack rule. So this might seem confusing, but I'm going to give you a couple specific examples so that you can apply them yourselves, and then you can determine which card you want to use. And once you have a card, whether or not you're actually getting real value out of it. In other words, if you're getting points and you're buying a particular piece of merchandise, and you might be buying it with points, and if you're getting 1 cent per point, let's say you're spending $200 on an item through the points, and then you look online and you realize, wait a second, I could have bought it for $100 cash, then you're not really getting a lot of value. 1 cent is what I would like to have as a baseline for my points, miles, you name it. And I try to equate points or miles to a penny. So if I'm getting 1 penny for every point or 1 penny for every mile, then I'm essentially getting 1% back. So at 2 cents, it would be 2% back. Thanks for watching. Take a moment to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future videos, and hit that like button as well. It really helps the channel out and helps the video spread to more people. Thanks for watching. Now there are cards that will give you, say, 2% cash back or 2.5% back. And I've got some links in the description on the various cards that we cover that give 2.5 or 3, but those are through hacks, meaning you might have to sign up for a checking account, you might have to deposit some of your payroll, you might have to do certain things. So yes, there are ways to get more than that 2%. It's usually store specific. There's usually some caveats and kind of hoops you need to jump through, worth doing. But let's just say that the baseline best you're going to get is 2% cash back. So we're going to use some examples here in a moment, and we're going to look at the 1% equals a penny or 2% equals 2 cents. So if you're looking at the cards and you say, I can get a card cash back that's going to give me 2%, or I can use one giving me miles or points. Well, if you can get a 2% cashback card, then you really want to get 2 cents or more for your miles, 2 cents or more for your merchandise, so that you can make sure if you're renting cars or getting flights or buying something through the mall, that if you're not getting more than 2 cents or 2 cents or more, then you're not getting, or you're not bettering the 2%. So let's look at the 2 cent rule. We're going to aim to get 2 cents for every mile or point. Now, in some cases, you may not know this before you get the card. That's one reason I make videos on all the various cards, and I show you, for example, I've got a United card, which I happen to love for various reasons, and I show and we'll give an example of using the points that I get or the miles that I get for an airline flight. And I always make sure I get at least 2 cents a point or more. And in some cases, I'll get 3, 3.5. And then there are other cards, or actually the United card and some other cards where you can use it for merchandise. Same thing, trying to get that 2 cents. And let me explain how that works. In the 2 cents, we're trying to get 2%. So ideally, you're either going to use a cash card, which is just cash. You can't beat cash. So what do we want out of miles and points? We want 2+ cents, meaning we want greater than 2 cents for every mile or point. So let me get into some examples. It's easier than you think. Once you get it, you'll know it forever. Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 examples. I happened to go into United and I looked at a flight going from Dulles to Las Vegas. Doesn't really matter where, but these are actual numbers, and I'll give you both examples. So first, let's look at cash back and miles, or call it points, but we'll call it miles. If you were to spend $10,000 at 2% cash back, you're going to receive $200. Straightforward math. 2% of 10,000 is $200. If you're using a miles card and they tell you that you're going to get 1 mile for every dollar you spend. So that $10,000 spend, you're going to get 1 mile for every dollar. You're going to get 10,000 points. Okay, so you've got these 2 cards. One's giving you 2% cash. One's giving you miles. Which one do you want to use? So in this example of going from Dulles to Las Vegas, direct flight, different times of day had different costs. Here's the first one, and I'll show you how to calculate it. And I have another video where I go into all of this via a spreadsheet, but I'm going to do it on the whiteboard here. So let's just assume, and I'm using these numbers for a reason, make it a little easier, that you spent $27,900 on your card over time. And that was going to yield you. Now, if it was a cash card, what would it give you? It would give you $558 cash. That's easy. 27,900 times 2% is $558. Now, in this case, we're getting miles. Spent 27,900. We're going to get 27,900. Okay, so now we know. We did our spend. We got our miles. We know what we would get in cash. We know what we would get in miles. Let's compare. So I looked at a flight, and this particular flight actually cost, for a one-way flight, 27,900 miles. They don't give you in a dollar equivalent because they want to kind of make it a little confusing for you. So we'll make it simple for you. So this was going to be 27,900 miles. Or, and on the United site, you can actually click and say, I don't want to redeem miles, I want to use cash. And you can go back and forth. So you click, show me miles, and you click, show me cash. Click, show me miles, click, show me cash. So when you're looking at miles, it was 27,900. What would it cost if I wanted to give them cash? It would cost me $679. All right, so what do I do? Really simple. It's just division. It's $679 is what they say the cash price is. You divide it by what they say the mile price is, 27,900. That's all you have to do. Look at the flight and say, what's the cash? Oh, it's going to cost me $679. What's the mile price? 27,900. And you divide. In this case, it comes out to be 0.024. Now, when you want to determine how much cash you're going to get, let's say from this $10,000, you're multiplying it by 2%, or you're going to multiply it by 0.02. So this is 0.024, and the equivalent of that is 2.4%. There you go. There's your answer. If you were to use your miles for this flight, you're not getting 2%, you're getting 2.4%. So that's the equivalent of getting 2.4% cash back. Now we've equated a cash back to points. They don't give you this particular amount every single time. It actually varies. All they're going to tell you is it's either this amount of money or this amount of points. Is it a good value? You don't really know, right? So you have to determine. If this flight, simple math, was half the cost in dollars, it was 340 essentially. If this flight was actually 340 or 27.9, then you would only be getting half the amount back, or 1.2%. That's not as good. So here's the second example. So you've logged in, you looked at the first flight, how many miles was it going to cost, how many dollars was it going to cost, and we figured out that you were essentially getting over 2% back. So that was better than if you would just use a 2% card. There's another flight during the day, different miles, different price. There's always multiple options, as you know. So in this case, we spent $18,400. It doesn't matter what we're spending or not spending, but we know we're getting 2% and we're getting a mile per point. I just use this to make it easy math. At 2%, we would have gotten $368 back. Okay? But in this case, we're using points cards and they're giving us 1 point per dollar spent. Spent 18,400. We're getting 18,400 points. This particular flight going the same place was $599. However, it only costs, and I did this on purpose, I used this math on purpose, it costs 18,400 miles. They had a special. So you take the cost of the flight, $599, you divide it by the miles that they're charging you. So you say, you know what, I'm going to use my miles for this flight instead of giving you cash. So what kind of a value am I getting? You divide $599 by 18,400, and it happens to be 3.3%, or 0.033 when you do the math. 0.033 when you divide, 3.3%. So in this case, by simply taking the price, divide it by the miles they want, you can determine what you're getting. If you had used your cash card when you spent this money during the year, you would have gotten $368 in cash. Then you go to United and you say, I want to fly, I want to take this flight. Well, if you had $368 in cash, the flight was almost $600. So you would have had to cough up another almost $250 for that flight. But by using miles in this example, it was only $18,400. So don't use cash. You might as well use your miles because you're getting 3.3%. In other words, that was the equivalent of having a cashback card give you 3.3%. That is extremely hard to find. Actually, it rarely, if never, happens unless you have some odd hacks and you're able to do it every now and then. So remember, if you use this formula, the 1 cent or 1% or 2 cents or 2%, you're going to figure out exactly what you're getting back and you'll be able to compare it. So the comparison's real simple. Do the percent comparison for dollars and then divide what are they charging. Now this works in their mall as well. You might be using points to purchase something. And if you know that you got an item that costs almost $600 and they want 18,400 points or whatever they want for it, you simply divide and it will tell you what percentage you would have gotten back. Now, I hope this makes sense. It's really simple. I have another video where I do it all in a spreadsheet and I go through multiple examples. It's a little more time consuming, but I thought if I just threw it up here on the whiteboard, and you can always just save this video and just come back to it when you want to see how you can determine the equivalency, especially if you're on one of the sites and you're booking a flight or a hotel room. I do this with my hotel cards as well. Am I getting a good value? You know, if I'm booking a hotel room for a certain number of points, am I getting 1% back? If that's the case, what would you do? Well, you would instead use your cash to get the hotel room because you're only getting 1% in value. But if you're getting 3% in value, then you might as well go ahead and use your points. And then most importantly is once you're actually hacking these cards, so to speak, in other words, getting the most you can from them in either cash rewards or miles, well, then you have to go to the last step, which is actually redemption. And this is where people can mess up. They think that, oh, I've got points and I use points, therefore I'm getting great value. Not necessarily. Because if you're only getting 1%, then they got you. See, that's why credit card companies use points and miles, because they want to obfuscate and confuse you. They want you to think that if you're just using miles and points, then those were free. What do you care? It must be a great value. But if they can get you to purchase things and only get 1% in value, then they just made twice as much, right? The cash card is giving 2% no matter what. They know what their bottom line is. Every month, that 2% goes out the door from the bank to the people who use the card. Done. But those companies using miles and points, they just give out miles and points. They don't actually know how much cash. So if they've convinced you to purchase a flight or to purchase some merchandise, and they've been able to convince you to do it with points and miles, and you get a terrible redemption rate where you're only getting 1%, then all of a sudden, they just got that off their books. How happy would these people be, these banks, if all of a sudden they could convince you, and you, of course, would never do this. At the end of the month, they say, hey, you know what? We're supposed to give you 2% cash back, but how would you like 1% instead? Are you going to say yes? Of course not. You're going to say no. But then why would you use your points and redeem them and only get 1% in value? Well, it's not your fault. You're just not doing the math and thinking about what you're actually getting. So they're going to throw this at you all the time. I see this in a lot of merchandise where they'll say, oh, buy this particular merchandise, buy this laptop, buy this bike, buy whatever. And you go online and it's $600, but they're essentially with points making you pay $1,200 or $1,400, and you don't realize it. You just think it's free stuff. So don't be confused by credit card companies. They want to confuse you. Don't let them. Take the time to do the math. In this example, it's either like, for example, Marriott. You use their credit card, you go in to book a room, you can click different buttons to filter, and you can have them show you the cost of a room in cash and the cost of a room in Marriott points. And then you can do the math. And you can say, awesome, 3.3%. I'm happy with that. I would have gotten 2%. I just hacked this, and I was able to get 3.3% back. Now, you might think that's crazy. That rarely happens. It happens all the time, particularly on the United card and flights. I get this kind of stuff all the time. I've gotten 4% or even better, which has been fantastic. So don't let them confuse you. Take the time to do the math. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section. Be more than happy to explain it again. Thank you very much for watching. So hopefully this makes sense. Please watch some of our other videos where I get into details about how to get out of debt and how to hack cards